Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Stephanie Tinsley. So, I actually met Stephanie at CrimeCon Denver this year. And a little bit about Stephanie. She is a Nashville native with a sharp mind for high stakes strategy, honed through years in trial law, venture capital, and private equity. In 2022, her world shifted when her family became entangled in the little trial you might not have heard of, the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial, one of the most notorious cases in recent history. In 2025, so just recently, Stephanie launched her podcast, Everything They Missed. It immediately jumped high on the charts, showing how successful both her hard work and research on cold, unsolved cases will be to the true crime community. Most recent, season 1, it's a dark, cinematic true crime podcast that unravels the 2007 murder of Danny Harris near Memphis, Tennessee. It's a story not heard about until now. From Steph Town Studios, Stephanie has spent the past year retracing these pieces, talking to unheard voices, convincing people to come forward, and bringing light to everything they missed. So without further ado, let's bring on Stephanie to Danny After Dark. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yes, you are so welcome. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Happy to be with you. And thank you for that intro. What a nice intro. I liked it. Thank you.
So I just want to start. So we just met at CrimeCon last month in Denver. And I do want to say, so we had messaged before meeting, and you were so sweet and kind in the messages that we had talked before. And then meeting you in person, you were that exact same person. And even more so, you just have one of those radiant personalities that when I met you in person, I was like, yeah, her podcast is just, it's going to be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, like we said before when we got on, there's a kindred spirit to people in true crime. Like mine. So I picked up on that same vibe from you. So I was very glad to meet you in person, and CrimeCon was really a good time. That was really a fun weekend.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of your experience at CrimeCon. But before that, one of my cats is howling downstairs. So
don't you love it when real life happens? Yes.
It's just one of those, like, and they've been quiet all night. And of course now I'm like, I'm not sure if my mic's picking it up, but if so, my apologies. Yeah, I have 6 cats, so it's a little.
Lovely. Let them all in. I love seeing cats. You just met my son that walked in the door before all this started. Yeah. Life happens when you're doing stuff from home.
So before we get into your podcast, I want to tell the listeners, so tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So tonight I'm in Nashville. I kind of share my time between Nashville, Tennessee, and South Carolina. But I started down the road of podcasting. I'm a first-time podcaster. Started down this road about a year ago. And, talk about CrimeCon in Denver. When I was at CrimeCon in Nashville the year before, I was there just as a fan. I hadn't started a podcast. It was just an idea that I was hoping to maybe do. And I had met some of the folks at Tenderfoot, and I thought, we all love Tenderfoot and all of their podcasts. And I thought, God, wouldn't that be a dream if I could work with the folks at Tenderfoot? So fast forward a year later, here I am doing a podcast, but very unexpected. I don't have any background in journalism or investigations at all. I grew up in a really small town in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee called Tullahoma. And my dad was a lawyer. My mom was an English teacher and a writer. And I feel like I had a career in finance, but I feel like my dad and my mom, they've both passed away. I feel like they're with me now every day when I'm doing my podcasting, because a lot of it is legal stuff that, I was having to sift through. And then I never knew that I was a writer until I started doing this. In fact, when I started, I thought I needed a co-writer, and I've got a co-writer, but I didn't think I'd be writing the shows. And I'd been in a position where I had to get a treatment out really quickly to somebody, and sat down to write one night, and it was just like, okay, I guess I'm a writer. Thank goodness. My mom, I remember all the English classes that I had with her in high school. Thank goodness. But just really humble upbringing, and went to the University of Tennessee and then moved to Nashville. And in 2020, met my husband, Mark Tinsley, who some people know from the Murdaugh murders. He was connected to that case. But that's really how I got inspired to do this and podcasting, was the Murdaugh trial. So if, some of your viewers remember, it was just this horrible double murder. South Carolina attorney, Alex Murdaugh, that murdered his wife and son, Paul and Maggie. And my husband is Mark Tinsley, and he was connected to the case. Some believe that Mark's lawsuit against Alex Murdaugh was the motive for the murders. He had uncovered the financial crimes. So we had just a media firestorm when all of the Murdaugh stuff happened, and Netflix filmed a documentary at our house, and Dateline and 48 Hours in 2020, and all of the crime shows you can imagine were in our living rooms. And I've been a true crime junkie since before that's a phrase. I mean, like in the 80s, I remember going to my aunt's house for the summer, and she'd be reading true crime books. And, I've seen every Dateline and Snapped, and, you name it, I've seen them all. And then I just found myself in the middle of this true crime story, and I'm in the middle of it. And when it was all said and done and the murder trial was over, I had the opportunity to think, as it was all happening, and I was watching the Netflix producers. I didn't even know what a I didn't know what a producer was. I didn't know what a director was. And I just found myself studying all these people during that time, and kind of thinking to myself, what if I could do that? What if a story found me? Could I do something like that? And I told myself that if a case found me and it was organic, that I would try. And in April of 2024, my son, who you met earlier, got in the car and started talking about his day. And I don't know if you've got kids, but teenage boys don't talk. And so when they get in the car and start talking, you start listening. And so Nathan gets in the car and starts talking about his friend Lucy got up at the school assembly and was talking about her dad, who's a lawyer. And I thought, that sounds like, somebody that would have interesting cases. And I went to his office to visit him, and he was telling me about some cases that were already closed, but then brought up this one, Danny Harris. And his client he is the head of the Tennessee Innocence Project. And so his client is Andrew Hayes. And when Jason was telling me about the story, he told me all about it, and he said, but you can't do this one because it's open litigation. And then he played the tape for me that you hear at the beginning of episode 1. And I heard this voice, and it hit me, if the wrong man is in prison, that means the real killer is still out there. And that is what had intrigued me about all of this is, who is that? Then can we find this person? Can I, and so that's kind of how it all started and began. And then here we are now, a year later, with episode 6 coming out Thursday.
That is, what an amazing just journey for that. Like your podcast, you sound like such a natural, like you could have said, I've been podcasting and in this field for 20 years, and I would totally believe it.
Yeah, no. And it was funny because when I considered doing it, I thought, oh my God, what if my voice is terrible? And so I had secretly, Nashville is Music City. We have the world's best voice coaches here for all the country singers. And so I secretly made an appointment with a voice coach. Didn't tell my husband, didn't tell anybody. I was mortified going, but I thought, okay, if this woman tells me I have a terrible voice, then I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. And I sat through this hour-long voice lesson, and she did all the breathing techniques and, all of this, and had me do something through a straw, which if your voice is ever gravelly, get a glass and a straw and blow bubbles in it, and that's what makes your voice sound more awake.
Interesting.
Yeah. But so after all of that, she said, "You've got a great voice. Just go for it." And, so that kind of gave me the confidence of, if this professional is telling me I'm okay, then maybe I'm okay. And, so that was my first baby step of, okay, if I can do that, then maybe I can do, maybe I can write, maybe I can. And so that's really how it all started. But yeah, it's weird hearing your voice for the first time. It's just weird. And so sometimes I close my eyes and just try to mimic, like, all of the Dateline anchors, or or even like Ashley Flowers, like on Crime Junkies. I'm like, okay, maybe I just use a true crime voice and hope it does well. So thank you for saying that.
It's funny because I know before we went live, I mentioned that when I started doing YouTube, I was a co-host on a
Yep.
channel about the Manson case, me and two co-hosts. And we did we're just your average people. And we did our first show, and it was live. And I'm like, that was great. And the second we ended, my co-host was like, "You say, like,
Oh, I know.
every other," and I'm like, "No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't." And I listened back and I was like, "Oh, I had no idea. No idea."
Yeah.
So yeah, hearing
Thankfully,
yourself
we have
back.
editing, but yeah. I do that too. I'll say, my husband and I did an interview the other night, and we had picked up on stuff that we had said. It's ums and ands, and so but you just do what you can. Just do what you can.
Then doing my shows live, it's like I'm more conscious of that, but like, yeah, if I say it, it is what it is. But yeah, it's so the first time like hearing yourself do it, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So in regards to, so you brought that up, the Murdoch case.
Yep.
So you talked about kind of your you being kind of thrown into that, and then your husband being into that through the lawsuit. So can we go a little bit more in depth on that? You did a great job with just like, here's this, but like for people who might not know the case, who are tuning in, a little bit more of why your husband's lawsuit might have been kind of the
catalyst,
tipping point, the catalyst.
Yeah. So my husband is Mark Tinsley, and he is the attorney for Mallory Beach's family. Mallory Beach was the young woman who was killed in the boat crash, and Paul Murdaugh was driving the boat. So the boat crash happened in 2018, and Mark had filed a lawsuit against Alex Murdaugh regarding the boat crash. And Alex, and you'll hear some people say Alex Murdaugh, some people say Alec. If you live in the Low Country, you call him Alec. I say Alex because his friends and family call him Alec, and I'm not his friend or his family. So I say Alex. I say Alex. But Mark had filed a lawsuit on behalf of the Beach family. And when he filed that lawsuit, he asked for Alex's financials. It's just typical what you do in a lawsuit. And Alex did not want to present his financials. And little did anyone know, but it was because he was stealing from his clients. And at that point, he had most likely stolen over $7 million from his clients. And again, no one knew why he was getting the pushback. And a few days before the hearing, where Mark was going to court to demand the judge to get the financials, 2 days before that hearing, Paul and Maggie were murdered. And now that we know what we know, most likely Alex was panicking for months that his financial crimes were going to be uncovered.
Yeah.
The boat crash was an easy way out, seeing that he could. And when you listen to the 911 call, he immediately says there was a boat crash, and insinuating that, some vigilante from the boat crash was after Paul and had murdered Paul, and Maggie was just collateral damage. But in Alex's mind, we've talked at length about him, and a lot of people ask, how could somebody do that? How could somebody kill their wife and son? Well, you can't rationalize a psychopath. And
Exactly.
although that sounds harsh to say, I think we've all, and you've done extensive work on Charles Manson. So it's like asking Charles Manson, like, why did you do that? Well, because I'm a psychopath, and I'm only thinking about myself. But when you look back and look at what happened, most likely Alex thought, if Paul and Maggie are dead, everyone's going to feel sorry for me. All of this is going to go away. Mark is going to drop the lawsuit, and poof, it'll all be gone. And he'll just go on and live his life, and his financial crimes will never come to light. And for a long time, no one suspected Alex. You and I have been in true crime. I've been a fan, but you've really done the work for a long time. When a wife is murdered, when a woman is murdered, who do we look at first?
Oh, always the husband.
The husband, right?
The boyfriend, the fiance.
Right.
Yeah.
The man in her life. And so I immediately thought Alex, but no one in Hampton, no one in the Low Country thought it was Alex, because they thought they knew him. So for a very long time, I was in fear for my life. I was in fear for Mark's life. We didn't really know who was out there and what was happening. But it was a really dark time until they finally figured it out and arrested him.
Yeah. So there's a few points coming out of that. But before I do that, so Karen Diamond is a friend of the show. She's in Australia. So she says Stephanie has a lovely voice.
Thank you, Karen. I have unexpectedly seen that the numbers of my show are big in Australia, which is weird. I had no idea. Evidently, Karen can probably weigh in on it. Australia has a really big true crime audience. So I was really excited to see that my show had gone international. So thank you.
Well, congratulations on that. That is amazing.
It is, but you know what? It's just a great story that even if I wasn't telling it, yeah.
And we'll definitely get.
But we can talk more Murdaugh stuff, because I can.
Yes, more Murdaugh stuff. And if anybody has any questions, please type them in the chat, and we'll ask Stephanie. In regards to your comment, and it's so true, and the way I always phrase it, because I think the word psychopath has been kind of twisted, and it's gone in many different routes over the years. But I try to always say on my channel, like, keep it very simple. Like, you can't rationalize irrational thinking, because like you said, any of the steps that in his mind might have been like, oh, if I do this, it doesn't make sense. But in an irrational mind, it makes total sense.
Right.
Total sense.
Right.
And I wanted to follow up on, so when you said you kind of suspected or kind of thought, like, again, kind of statistically speaking, the husband's always involved, but the community didn't necessarily think that, because they thought they knew him. Once the mask was lifted,
right?
Was there any rumblings of, well, we knew something, in your community, well, we knew something was up, or is it still, I never saw this coming, he wouldn't have done that? Or was it a mix of it?
No, it was, I never saw it coming, he wouldn't have done that. No, no. I mean, even, I think my husband now would probably say, because he had worked side by side with him on some cases, and they had practiced law, not in the same office, but they had practiced law in the same community for 20 years or 30 years. But absolutely not. No one saw it coming. I mean, the Murdaughs, even though now, people would call them a dynasty and they were feared, that was kind of over exaggerated. I mean, they had this big firm in downtown Hampton, but they were the typical small town prominent family. And, they would have cookouts for the community and the police department. And, Alex would know everybody's name. And, he was great at politicking, but no, nobody saw this dark side. Nobody. And I think it's because, I only met Mark in 2020. And I had only been exposed to it for a few years. I didn't know Paul and Maggie and Alex. And so just my brain went to the husband did it because I didn't know him. But no, and you can go into the community now and there are probably people, we met people at CrimeCon that don't think Alex did it, that he couldn't have done it.
Interesting.
So, it's more people, I would say 90% of the community now know because they watched the trial. But it was a shock. It was a shock. It was devastating to the community.
Yeah. What was your thoughts, or, if you're able to kind of,
Yeah.
speak on what your husband thought too, but also the community so the trial ended and then everything came out with like the clerk of court,
Yeah.
Becky Hill.
That's right.
Becky Hill. And there was this whole view of like, could he get a new trial because of this? Like what was going on in your mind or your husband's or rumblings in the community? Because that was on our end, just kind of your average true crime listener and watching this, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this might undo everything.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about Becky Hill as much as I can, and then the trial issue. Becky Hill was a clerk of court for a very long time, and I think that the trial and the media and the attention and the international attention was new for everybody, and it's hard to know how to act. It's hard to know. It's hard to not kind of feed into all of the everything. And, I think perhaps she did some things that, probably looking back, she wouldn't do. But I saw her at the trial almost every day. I mean, she would help facilitate places for everyone to sit, and was a very nice woman. Now, in my opinion, she shouldn't have written a book. In my opinion, she most likely said some things, in my opinion, in the jury room. Do I think that's going to get him a new trial? No. And
Right.
I only say that because I have sat through several interviews with my husband. We've talked at the kitchen table, and he doesn't think it's going to get Alex a new trial. There's, Judge Newman did an amazing job keeping that trial on track, doing everything to the letter. And I don't think anything like this is going to get him a new trial. I don't think anything's going to get him a new trial, period.
Okay.
If he did, for any reason, get a new murder trial, he's in jail for the rest of his life anyway because of the financial crimes.
Right.
So he's not going anywhere. But I would hate for the community to have to go through that again, because it was very difficult for the entire community. I mean, Hampton has maybe 20,000 people, maybe. And during the trial, like it was a carnival. Like there were food trucks set up. There were, more media than you can even imagine. But like when you would drive up to it and all these food trucks, it was like, this is honestly a carnival. And like just kind of making your way into the courtroom. So it was definitely an experience that I'll never forget. I hope it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's just, it's like on the one hand, like, the media wants to talk about the case and be out there and get, the exclusive. But on the other hand, it's like this, like, remember why you're there. At the end of the day, 2 people are dead. They were brutally murdered. And again, like you said, this is your community. It's a small town community. None of you asked for this. You didn't ask for this spotlight on where you live and this invasion of your home.
Right.
And yet here it is. And it's, I mean, just being, into, reading about true crime and stuff, it's so sad because then once it wraps up, it's like, okay, on to the next trial,
Yeah, right.
horrible.
Yeah, exactly. But it had all the elements that we love. I mean, it was a prominent family. It was a beautiful woman. It was a nice looking son. It was a prominent white family. It's double murder. It's a whodunit. And then there was all of these crazy characters. What was the cousin's name?
I don't remember.
Gosh, what was his name? So it was just like all of these characters that just kept coming into the, so it really, there was no way it wasn't gonna be a carnival. Yeah. But he'll be in jail for the rest of his life. Yeah.
Good on that note. Good on that note.
Yeah.
So just to step back, because we didn't touch upon it, but when I was reading your bio, and I thought it was very interesting so you went to school for trial law, correct?
No, so I'm not a lawyer, but I can see how you would make that mistake because
okay, my mistake.
I have worked in litigation, and that is in my bio, and that does actually sound a little confusing. No, I went to the University of Tennessee and studied business, and my dad was a lawyer, and when I got out, there's a large litigation firm in Tennessee that I went to work for. And I was the litigation practice group manager. So I was the business side of litigation, but I worked with all of the trial lawyers, and trial law had just always been so fascinating to me because, it's like one of the last arenas that, and our legal system is so interesting. The justice system is so interesting. So I'm not a lawyer, but I've spent a lot of time in and around it, and then married a trial lawyer, so that makes sense.
Right. My apologies, my mistake on that.
No. That's easily done.
So in regards to, the Murdaugh trial ends, and you then transition to, we talked about at the beginning, but starting your podcast, Everything They Missed.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked a little bit about how, you hadn't had any background in podcasting. But I wanted to talk more about your podcast because it's amazing.
Thank you.
Stephanie, it is amazing. And again, if you were like, I've been doing this for 20 years, I would totally believe you. It's so well put together.
Thank you.
Extremely informative, and you're doing good work with your podcast, giving the voice that you are with your platform. But for people who haven't listened to it, I guess tell us a little bit about how you came to that title for your show of Everything They Missed. And then can we talk a bit about the Danny Harris case?
Yeah. So, titles are hard. Yours is easy, Danny in the Dark. But titles are hard
After
to
Dark.
land. Danny After Dark. I'm sorry. Danny After Dark. I'm sorry. I didn't eat dinner tonight.
What's funny, Stephanie, when I first started, if you go back to like my early ones, the lights were out. I had a lit candle in the back. So
I had just watched that before I had gotten on. So that's probably why I said that. Yes. Yeah. So titles are really hard. And I had knocked around, 15, 20. I mean, I would text my friends, what about this? What about this? And I early on, I had, Donald Albright is the CEO of Tenderfoot. And I had presented him this story. I'd met him at CrimeCon in Nashville. And when he agreed to come on as my creative director, I thought, okay, this is great. Now I've got somebody to kind of hold my hand through the process. So if the sound design of the podcast is amazing, it's because Tenderfoot is behind it. And Tenderfoot is one of the best. Yes. And Alex Vespasit is the president of Tenderfoot Labs, and he's my co-writer. So, it had gotten to the point, and it's just the team of us. I mean, that's it. I do all the investigating. I do all the interviews. Donald and Alex just help package it up and make it 30 minutes and the cliffhangers and all of the good stuff that they help me with. But it was July, like the podcast came out in September, but it was July and we still hadn't landed on a title.
Oh,
And
wow.
it just came to me. I think I was out walking, and I think that's just what happens in life is when you just give up and just open your mind up and just, I don't know. And then it just came, it just came to me. And everything they missed is so great for this particular story, but it also lends itself to future seasons and future cases. And I was hoping that I had a feeling this was going to be something that I love to do. And I was hoping that it was going to be well received. And so I thought this title could lend itself to multiple seasons.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why we landed on it.
That is, oh my gosh, that is so wild. And you're absolutely right. It's when your mind isn't like, I need to have a title, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Just out walking, and I don't even know how it happened, but I remember texting Donald and saying, "What about this?" And I think his response was, "Finally." Like, yeah, finally. But yeah, so to answer your second question, this particular case, Danny Harris, he was 55 years old, a resident of Cordova, Tennessee, which is right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And when I was hoping to find a case, I was hoping to find a case either in Tennessee or South Carolina because I've got dual residences. And Memphis is about a 2.5-hour drive for me. And so I was very happy to land on this case for that reason. But Danny was 55 years old. He was a retired Tennessee Air National Guard. He's got 4 sons, 2 are in law enforcement. And late in life, when he retired, alcoholism took a toll on him. And I can relate to that. I've got alcoholism in my family, and so I related very much to how something could get so dark that he had invited a prostitute to come live with him. And it's easy to blame somebody for bringing bad people into your life, but sometimes life happens, and you can find yourself in darkness and doing things that you wouldn't typically do. He had met Tammy Vance on a dating chat line. So it's not like a Bumble or a OnlyFans or anything. It's one of those that you just dial up and someone leaves there a voicemail of like, this is who I am and this is who I'm looking for. But he had invited this woman into his life. And one day he hadn't paid his rent. He hadn't paid his rent in 2 months. And the apartment manager was going to do a welfare check and eviction. And in Memphis, when people are evicted, the sheriff's department goes because you just take all their belongings and you put them on the street. So when they knocked on the door, no one answered. The door was locked and the alarm system was on, and they were met with this terrible odor. Danny had been left for dead for 2 months, which is crazy because I've been to that apartment complex. It's a huge apartment complex. There's over 1,000 units. And his particular unit had people on each side. And so if you can just imagine in the Memphis heat, there was a heat wave that summer. In the Memphis heat, 2 months, no one noticing Danny. And because of his alcoholism, he was estranged from his family. And so his sons were giving him some tough love, and that's why they hadn't checked on him for 2 months. Yeah. So when the police came to the scene, they had realized that he had been dead for a very long time. There was blood spatter all over the walls. But, what was so interesting is the door was locked and the alarm system was on. And the AC was down to 60 degrees. There were candles scattered all over the living room, like someone was trying to mask the smell. So all of these things that are pointing to what? Someone knew whoever the killer was knew him. You know enough to lock the door. You know enough to put the alarm system on. However, even with 2 sons in law enforcement, it was one of the fastest investigations I've ever seen. I mean, I think I've seen every Dateline and any true crime show out there. And yes, cops try to get an answer within 48 hours. That's the golden hour, 48 hours.
Right.
But a lot of times it doesn't happen. But in this case, it did. However, they didn't test for any DNA. Danny was found on a comforter that was soaked in blood. They didn't test the comforter for DNA. They didn't test, there were 5 bloody fingerprints found at the scene. They only tested 2 of the bloody fingerprints. There were clothes in the washing machine. I mean, the first thing, like even as armchair detectives, what do? You look in the washing machine to see if somebody has cleaned up. They didn't collect the bath mat that was in the washing machine. So all of these things, and you're asking yourself, why? If his son has 2, if his sons, 2 of them are in law enforcement, you'd think it'd be a very meticulous, slow investigation. But it wasn't. And, I won't give away too much of the show, but you can easily hear all of this in episode 1. Andrew Hayes was a young black man in Memphis, 24 years old, had never met Danny, but had given 2 women a ride to the police station. And these 2 women were witnesses. They had some information related to Danny's murder. And Andrew was just giving them a ride to the station and sitting in the lobby with his 1-year-old son waiting. And because of a name mix-up, one of the witnesses had mentioned the name Wayne, and Andrew's middle name is Wayne. So because of that, he was pulled back into an interview room. And because he's got a 62 IQ, that's equivalent to a 3rd grader. And so in his 3rd grade mind, he's not realizing when he waived his Miranda rights, he didn't know what those were. When he waived his Miranda rights, it went from an interview into an interrogation. And 27 hours later, unrecorded, they did not record the interrogation. 27 hours later, Andrew confesses to his confession didn't even match the evidence at the scene. He said that he hit Danny on the back of the head and Danny was hit on the front of the head. He confessed that he killed him on the 2nd story. I've been to his apartment. There is no 2nd story. There's only 1 level. And he confessed to killing him 2 weeks ago, and they knew by his pacemaker records he had been dead for 2 months. But that's all they needed. They just needed a confession, and poof. All of the other investigating, they had other suspects, they had caught other people lying, but because this 24-year-old black man with a 62 IQ was coerced, in my opinion, into a confession, he's been in jail for the last 18 years. And no one has looked. Yeah, no one has looked at anything. If you look this case up right now, this case is closed. There's
right.
And they had put it to bed. And Andrew had applied for the Tennessee Innocence Project, which gets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases a year. But the attorneys had looked at the evidence and had found new evidence and had filed a petition in 2023, and that's how all this got brought back to life. But even when they filed the petition, it was filed quietly. I mean, most of these cases are very quiet. They're never picked up by the press. And it was only because I sat in Jason's office and he told me about it that I knew. And so this story that unfolds, I wanted it to be very true crimey. I mean, I'm very true crimey, very dark, very morbid. Like, I love all that stuff. And I kept telling myself, I don't want to do a wrongful conviction because we already know how the story ends, right? When I'm scrolling through what podcasts I listen to, it's rare that I'll land on a wrongful conviction story because of that. Like, I want the mystery and the whodunit. Mm-hmm. But when I heard the new evidence and I saw it was all pointing away from Andrew and toward this other person, I wanted to find that other person. And that, it's as the story unfolds, there's a lot to learn. But it takes you down the road of this dark, savage, brutal murder. But then throughout the story, you hear the ripple effects of what happens. But then it pulls you back into the dark, true crimey stuff when I hire my own investigator to go after the real killer. And so it has been quite a ride. I feel like that was such a long answer. You can interrupt.
No, that's an amazing answer.
I just kept going. I just kept going.
I'm like, okay, every question I had, you answered.
Yeah. So, like, I know we all love the real dark, true crimey stuff. And I really, really, really do. And I really wanted that story. Like we all watch YouTube, we all listen to podcasts for different reasons. Sometimes you just want to put on your headphone and listen to a story and be done with it. But sometimes like you get motivated to do something, and this story has that too. But it's also happening in real time. I mean, court dates are happening right now. Andrew had a court date August 5th. And that decision hasn't come down yet. And that could be very beneficial to his case. It could be very catastrophic. But, when I hired my investigator to go after who I think is the one responsible, that's all happening as we speak right now. So when episode 6 drops on Thursday, we'll take a 2-month break to catch up on investigating and court dates. But if you're listening, I mean, you're literally listening to stuff that's happening right now. Like I'll record something last week, right before episode 5 came out. I was on the mic doing my voiceover 3 hours before it was going to be released. But I mean, you know how that is. You just kind of have to do stuff on the fly sometimes.
Yeah. So Kane in the chat is asking, was he eventually exonerated? So no, I think Stephanie just did a great job explaining that. So no, this is still ongoing.
Yeah. No, it's still ongoing. And Kane, I hope, like cross your fingers, do whatever you do to but no, I mean, we're on that road. And I hope someday that Andrew Hayes is exonerated, because I've been to prison and I've met Andrew. And part of when I was doing this story, I'm a storyteller and I love being a storyteller, and I wanted to include as many people as possible. So I've met Andrew's family and I've met the investigators and the original attorneys, but it was very important to me to look Andrew in his eyes and to get a vibe from him myself. Am I sitting in front of a killer or am I sitting in front of an innocent man? And before I met him, I had been working on this story for about a year and drove up to Tiptonville, which is where the prison is in West Tennessee. It's very scary. Have you ever been to a prison?
I have not, no.
It's scary. It's scary. And you're glad that you're walking out. I mean, it's everything that you would think, like, the big gates open and then you go in and you're patted down and you have to lift up your shirt and then you walk into another room, and when the inmate comes in, you can briefly hug if you're family, and then you sit kind of theater style, like side by side, not toward each other. And so Andrew and I, it was interesting. I didn't know what I was going into. And when you get there, you have to, at least this was my experience. It may be different in other jails, but like, you don't have your phone, obviously, there's no recording. And I had to wait because, first of all, Andrew hadn't gotten my letters, so he didn't know I was coming. He had sent me an application, but when I got there, so I had to wait like 30 minutes. So you're sitting there without a phone, just, like waiting. And when he walked in, I had talked to him through his attorney and interviewed him. And so he had heard my voice and seen me over Zoom. But we sat and talked for about 2 hours that day. And any questions that I had, was he lying? Is he truly innocent? all went away when I met him. And I felt like it was important to meet him and to know that. And it also made my drive to find the responsible one. I mean, that fire burned even hotter after I met Andrew, and then thought, okay, we got to get this other person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not exonerated yet, but we're hoping. And the judicial system is not easy. And it's supposed to be difficult. I mean, when a jury says guilty or not guilty, I mean, it should stick. We should all believe in the justice system, but sometimes they get it wrong. And when they get it wrong, it's a very slim chance that it'll ever be righted. But when the Innocence Project gets a hold of something, your chances are greater. But it's still on average 13 years. So they've been fighting for Andrew since 2023. And I have a very strong gut feeling, because I don't want to give too much away, but my podcast has uncovered some things that I think are going to be helpful. And I really think Andrew has a fighting chance, and he didn't before. And I think that as we listen to the podcast, I think that there's a very good chance that you could hear the person responsible getting indicted. And I hope that happens. I hope that happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. Kane followed up. That's so sad. I hope you can help him. Agreed.
Me too, Kane. And you just keep
Agreed.
thinking about it. Me too.
So when you first reached out that you were going to cover this case, what was his reaction? Because the Innocence Project was already working with him.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, I mean already case. But what was that initial conversation? And was it by letter? Was it through his attorney? How did that go? And what was his reaction to you being interested in that?
So I first met him over Zoom with his attorney, and his attorney's name is Jason Gishner. And Jason had told him about me before we met, and told him that we were doing a podcast, and had to explain what a podcast even was. We told him it was like a documentary over the radio. He's not a dummy. He's a smart guy. But like, if you've never heard of a podcast, you're, I wouldn't say smart guy, but he's, and so we explained to him what a podcast was. But when I met him, he's excited, but also he's somebody that's been in jail for 18 years for a crime that he didn't commit. So why is he going to think something's going to be different now? But he does have a lot of hope in Jason, and he does have a lot of hope in the Innocence Project. And he does, what he saw in this and me in this podcast was, now his story's going to be out, and people are going to hear it, and people are going to know that he's not guilty. And that's what he was hoping for in all of this. He's never asked me for anything except one thing, and I'll tell that story in a minute. But he was just happy that maybe 100 people in Memphis will hear it. I'm like, no, honey, if I have anything to do with it, it's gonna be millions of people are gonna hear this story, because it's a doozy, and you need to get out. But it's hard to be in a position where you have the opportunity to give somebody hope. And it's a lot of responsibility, because you don't want to give false hope.
Yeah.
And I met Andrew's mother, Flora Hayes. She's 60 years old. And I sat in her living room with her and Andrew's sister, LaConda, and his brother, D'Angelo, and his 3-year-old, and Andrew's son, Tamarian, who was only 1 year old when Andrew went to jail. And it's hard to sit in a room with a family when they look at you like, are you the one? Are you going to be the one? Are you the one to help us? And it's, I carry the weight of that some. It's the Innocence Project that really has the weight of all of this. But I do feel like, I hope that this podcast in some way is educational and does give the family what they're hoping for. But, it's difficult. And I mentioned his son. His name is Tamarian. And his son was sitting in his lap that day at the police station. Tamarian was 1 year old. And Andrew was holding him when he got pulled back into the interrogation room, and he never saw Tamarian again. And when I walked in, I thought I was only meeting Flora that day, and his whole family came out. And then Tamarian was kind of standing in the doorway, and he's this big football player looking kid. He's tall and muscular, and he looked like Andrew, and then introduced himself. And when I had left Andrew in jail that day after the visit, I asked him, is there anything that I can do for you besides this show? And I'm thinking he's going to ask me to put money on his commissary or to send him stamps or something. And he said, can you bring my child to me? It's very emotional. I know, it makes me want to cry. He asked me if I could bring his child to him. And so I did. So I told Tamarian, do you want to go meet your dad? And it had been 18 years, and he had never met his dad, didn't know his dad, and had been in the system himself. When he was giving his interview, he said, you know, I've been in juvie. I graduated high school from juvie because I didn't have a dad. No one has taught me how to be a man. Mm-hmm. And so I drove Tamarian to prison one day. My husband came, and we drove 11 hours. We drove 3 hours to get to Tamarian and then 2 hours up. And the whole way we talked, and Tamarian was nervous and he didn't know what to expect. And I told him, just, you know, don't expect anything. And so we walked in, and the guards knew what was happening. And you're only supposed to hug very briefly, and then you have to sit down side by side. Mm-hmm. And when Andrew didn't know Tamarian was coming that day because he wasn't getting my letters. Right. And so we're standing there, and he sees Tamarian, even though he hasn't seen him in 18 years. He hasn't seen him since he was a baby. And the guards let them hug, and they embraced and hugged like I have never seen two human beings embrace in my life. And the guards were crying, and they let him hug for minutes and minutes and minutes. And Andrew, even though Tamarian was taller than him, Tamarian, like, he held the back of his head like a baby, and they just held each other. And it wasn't anything but two men needing to know, do you love me? Mm-hmm. Do you blame me? Do you love me? And Tamarian, when he left prison that day, he said, I went back and I had to listen to some of his interviews last night because I put him in this next episode, in episode 6. And I was re-listening to him again, and he was saying that he was just happy he knew his dad was okay, and that he knew his dad was strong enough now to hold on until he got out. And, you know, I never expected this true crimey podcast would have a moment like that for me. Mm-hmm. And I told my husband walking out that day, if I don't do anything else, if no one hears this, I got to witness that. And as a parent, I mean, you saw my big teenage son walk in before we got on here. That's all I would want is, can you bring my child to me? And so I was very grateful to be able to do that.
What a gift. Like, even because he didn't get your letter, so he didn't know. And that just raw moment to be present for that, like, what a gift for you and your husband to be able to see that. And yeah. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, there's really incredible. It's, and I think there's stereotypes of in our head of like how people would act or react, but this was the most human moment that I've ever seen. Just the most human moment of a man with his child who he hadn't seen for 18 years, and a child needing to be held by his dad, and so I was very glad to be part of that.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to listen to episode 6.
Yeah, when you hear them, oh my goodness. And you'll hear us all in that living room and you know, it's a roller coaster because it goes from being excited and joyful, and of course they are, because now someone's here to hear their story. And then you sink back into this reality of, is Andrew going to get out? There's no guarantee that he's getting out. And, you know, again, this is happening in real time. Like when you listen to the show and then you come back and listen to the new episodes in December, you'll be following right along with, is he going to get out? So, and is this other person going to be held responsible? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we have some comments here. Karen says, Danny, I'm crying listening to Stephanie. Much love to you, Stephanie. And yeah, Kane agrees as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to ask you, so in regards to, I know this case, you know, there was something with that you realized this was the case I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You could have hypothetically picked any case from anywhere, but you have one that's close to you and close to your community and close to where you're from. Does that add for you another layer of wanting, you know, in regards to how you do the podcast or how you want it presented, or any added pressure because this is, you know, this is your area, this is where you're from?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, because the answer is yes, very much yes. I feel a responsibility because, you know, I'm sure your viewers are obviously all across the nation and the world, but, you know, I think some people have, the South can have a stigma to it. And even Tennessee can have a stigma to it sometimes. And I did feel a responsibility to tell this in a way that isn't bashing the community, but is shining a light on some things that the community needs to work on. I mentioned, you know, Andrew had a 27-hour unrecorded interrogation. In Tennessee, the police aren't required to record interrogations. That's the craziest thing I
Even
ever
still?
heard, even now. So listen, 20 states, you're going to not believe it. 20 states in the United States, 20 states do not have to record interrogations. By law, 20 states by law do not have to record interrogations.
That
And
is
so
scary.
it's scary. It's scary that there can be a murder confession and you have no idea how you got to that murder confession.
Or there wasn't one,
Or there
and it's
wasn't
being
one.
said that there was.
Right. So
Anything can be said that there was when it never happened.
anything can be said, crime scene photos can be shown, anything can happen. And you would think that the police would want a record of it. I mean, you would think that they would want to say to the jury, he confessed, this is how he confessed. We didn't contaminate it by showing him crime scene photos. We didn't give him false memories. So when I pulled up a picture of the United States that showed which states don't record, it's mostly the South. Why? I feel like I could answer that, and I don't want to, but I don't like that. And so I did feel like when the stories heard that I want people to learn about Tennessee and know Tennessee because it is a beautiful state. You know, Nashville is a beautiful, very modern city now. I mean, we've gotten a lot of folks from California and Nashville and New York that have moved here and made it very modern. But Memphis is still a very small, 80% Black community. And, you know, I want to portray that as it is, but then also give a taste of, you know, the community. And throughout the podcast, like, you will hear all the accents. I mean, it's Southern accents, and Memphis has even got a very distinct accent that I love so much. One of his attorneys is an 82-year-old attorney who's still practicing and who looks like Morgan Freeman, and his accent is amazing. But, you know, I think that we all should find work to do in our community, whether it's, you know, if it's a cold case that you're going after, or whatever it is you choose to do. I mean, everything, if you start at home and in your community, that's where I think a lot of stuff is accessible. And so it was very important to me to find something here. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even just to go even a step, below, if someone's like, I don't know where to go and physically be of assistance to my community. I don't know where to start, know what to do. The Innocence Project is a great place that, they need the resources to do the work that they do. So at the very least, donating to the Innocence Project. I've donated to the Innocence Project.
Yeah.
They do amazing work, and they can't do that without donation. So, even, $25 donation, something like that goes a long, long way. And that's something anybody can easily just kind of do, and at the very least.
Yeah, that's right. And on my website, everythingtheymiss.com is if you scroll to the very end, I have a donate now button for the Tennessee Innocence Project. And you're exactly right. Like they only run on donations. I think they have a couple of federal grants, but not much. And people think the Innocence Project is headquartered in New York and they fund all of the others, but no, each state has their own individual organization that's individually funded.
Thank you for
And
clarifying that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So if whatever state you live in, your state most likely has one, and they appreciate everything. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah.
So in regards to anything that would be upcoming for your podcast, so you did already kind of put that out there that it will be on a hiatus until December.
Right.
But what can have you, how do I word this? What can people expect or kind of look forward to once the hiatus has ended, or once you're caught up to where everything is in this case, kind of the what next while we're waiting, what next?
Yeah. So
you might not have that answer.
No, we do. We do. I mean, it is a what next that is a jaw dropper. 2 nights before episode 1 dropped, 2 nights before CrimeCon, I get a message on X. And when I looked at this name, I about had a heart attack. I had never in my wildest dreams thought this person would reach out to me. And this person reached out to me and said, I want to be on your show. And I about died. And I couldn't write this person into episodes 1 through 6 because we had already gone, we had already started writing them. But this person now joining the show and my investigation and some of the things that it has uncovered has completely changed the trajectory of the entire show. So if you listen to 1 through 6 and you're captivated by that, when you come back in December and you hear who is coming up next, your mind will be blown. I mean, even if it wasn't my show, it blows my mind that it's even happening. And it completely turns the case upside down on its head. You won't believe it. And I'm not even saying that to be dramatic. I'm not. It's really great. So yeah, so there's a lot to finish with in episodes 7 through 10. Tenderfoot keeps telling me there's going to be more episodes, but I'm like, no, there's got to be an ending. There's got to be an ending to this. I don't think I can keep going. But it is extraordinary. You will not be disappointed.
This gives everybody time to listen and catch up 1 through 6. So, or re-listen, right. Because there's so much detail that you give that I think re-listening there's something that if somebody might miss this, or even like, again, hearing, it's one thing to hear the content, but to, the interviews that you do, like with, I know I'm more so projecting for an episode that's going to be released that I haven't even heard yet. And I'm like, I already know I'm going to listen to that multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to listen to it from the perspective of the information in the content you're giving, but I'm going to also want to just re-listen just to hear what was happening in that moment and just really
Yes.
take that in.
Yeah, you really will. You really will. Um, And, in the hiatus, I'm going to be dropping some bonus stuff and, just to kind of keep people engaged until we come back. And you can find me on all the socials at the Stephanie Tinsley. But I would love, I mean, you're an excellent creator. I would love to hear from you. Like when you hear interviews, because you know how, I mean, you have hours and hours and hours of interviews and content, and you have to take an amazing 3-hour interview and cut it down to 5 minutes. And I would love to hear from listeners, which ones they want extended interviews.
Mm.
There's a bonus episode that's got my husband Mark in it and my best friend Elizabeth, who's also on the show. But I've got, all these other extended interviews. Some people may not know, when you listen to the music, Brazen Cyrus, who's Miley Cyrus's brother, is a friend of mine, and he composed the original music for the show.
I don't think I knew that.
He's a big true crime fan. And we had connected, Brazen and I. Brazen is one of the lesser known, that's not a nice way to say it, but he keeps a lower profile than than Miley and most of the other Cyrus family. He is so kind, so smart, so creative. And when I was looking for a show, or looking for a story, we had talked about, there was another case, the Sebastian Rogers case, which is the missing child here in Nashville. And I had listened to something, and I'd seen like Brazen had made a comment. And so I texted him on Instagram, like, do you want to talk? I didn't know you were a true crime fan too. We became fast friends, and he created the music for the show. And so that's another thing too. Like as you're listening, listen to the music behind it. Listen to, when things get dramatic and you hear, how the music escalates, or when there's a real emotional scene, listen to the music behind that. And Brazen sat with me and listened to the story and designed music specifically for these scenes. And that's part too of like why it's so special to me, because I really tried to make it so when Danny Harris's family listens to the story, because I feel like they're still victims, that they believe that we did his father justice and we took a lot of time, and that this isn't to be consumed as entertainment, that it is a terrible story. It's a very exciting story, but it's one that, we've put a lot of care into. So yeah, even the theme song, Brazen took a long time, even though it's just a little 5-second thing. Like, it's everything has got thoughts put into it.
Yeah. And I do want to give credit where credit is due, as a true crime consumer, and, do people, listen to podcasts, watch YouTube channels, watch TV shows for the entertainment value? That's always going to exist. Yeah. But at the end of the day, again, somebody who's listened to your show, I don't listen to it thinking, oh, this is an entertaining show. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Yeah. It is there's so much sympathy and care around how you present this. And it's usually, when I use the word victim focused, usually we think in regards to Danny. But here it's a bit different, because it's, I'll just say in my perspective, very clear that the wrong person is behind bars. And you're still handling that from a perspective of, the wrong man is behind bars here, and we need to do justice. And there is that, again, what I call kind of victim-centered perspective of your podcast. And there's been a real, out of all the times for you to start a podcast, now is a great time, because there's been, and I've talked about this with other content creators on before, especially some who've been doing it for so long, like, how have you seen that shift? And you're a true crime consumer as well. And for a long time, true crime only focused on the perpetrators and not the people who were wronged and the victims in this. And there's been a real shift in the best way for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I want to make sure that you, from a listener again, that I don't listen to your podcast as like, putting it on while I'm driving, because I listen to podcasts when I drive,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, this is entertaining. No, there's a message here. There's a lot of sensitive and careful crafting of what you do, and it's done in the most respectful way.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Yeah. And I agree. I think you're right on. I think there's a way to tell these stories that are entertainment and does feed the true crime sweet tooth that we have, but to honor those that we're talking about. And so thank you. I'm glad you said that because th- someone had once told me, and I thought, oh my God, then I'm not going to get in this business. I was telling somebody that had been in the industry for a very long time that I wanted to do this, and he said, just make sure you get a story, the wackier the better. And I thought, no, that's not, I don't want the wackier the better. I don't want the, you know, head found in a box. And, like that's not the kind of thing. And so it's the true crime community that I think is rising up and demanding this and demanding the victim focused, but also in a great John Grisham like story. And so I think we can, say thank you to all the true crime community for demanding this. So I'm for it.
so speaking of the true crime community, CrimeCon. So you had been to the Nashville one just as a regular attendee, and I was there in the same perspective as well.
Yeah.
And this year you were there, and I noticed from I was like, Stephanie is hustling here, like making
I was hustling.
so many connections. I'm like, and then again, meeting you, you are so lovely and so amazing in person as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, this podcast is gonna be amazing. Like I already, when we messaged after and it had done so well in the charts, I'm like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
You.
Like, which is amazing. But talk, your perspective of CrimeCon. Can you just talk a little bit about that from, I guess, last year versus this year? When this year you have a podcast that you're trying to get out there so that people hear the story. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So in Nashville 24, I was there just as a fan. And so it was surreal to be there this year promoting my own show. And in fact, I don't know if you probably got one. I had all these business cards made up, and on the front it had a QR code that would take you to my show. And then on the back it had a QR code that would take you to my website. Well, my husband had probably 100 cards in his pocket, and people still recognize him for the Murdaugh stuff. So women were coming up, all sorts of people were coming up to get pictures with him. And God love him. Every time somebody would come up to get his picture, he'd hand him my business card. So
Nice.
He was hustling just as hard as I was. But yeah, I loved being there and talking to the other creators, and it was surreal to actually have a show. And then I was on a panel. I spoke on a panel with my husband, which was fantastic. We had talked about the Murdaugh case in my podcast. So it was, I think 2,000 people were in the audience. So that was wonderful to experience that. But what I gathered is the true crime community, it's just like your brothers and sisters, because everybody has this kindred spirit. Even though it's true crime and we all love the stories, it's not some morbid, dark, everybody is there, loving what each other is doing, propping each other up, wanting to get to know each other. It's just a really fun community. So yeah, I can't wait to go back next year. I'm too restless to sit in a booth, so I'll come sit with you. But I have to walk around too much. So I like all the panels. So yes, you will see me in Vegas next year.
Woohoo!
For sure. I know.
When I saw you down as being in one of the panels, I was like, another one I would have went to. but I
It
was
was
at my
fun.
booth, which I'm very thankful that I had a booth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that was
You had a great booth. You were in a great location, and every time I turned around, you had a lot of people coming up and talking to you, and so I'm sure that was a really great experience to be able to meet your fans. I mean, I'm sure that's a really cool experience.
it's weird. It's
Is
interesting
it?
because like I'm just like, when the computer, shuts down at the end of the night, I am, I have my 6 cats. I am a book nerd. Like I volunteer at my cat shelter. Like I'm just like, I just consider myself a nerd.
I
And
bet.
so like when people come like, Danny, I watched your show. Can I get a picture? I'm like, with me? You want one with me?
Uh-huh.
Like what?
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But it's hard to describe. It's just, yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. Well, you do a lot of really great work. And I can tell by the questions that you ask that you're really passionate about what you do.
Oh, thank
You
you.
ask really good
I
questions. Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
So just to wind things down. So in regards, I ask this of everyone. My community here is a very big pet friendly community. So Stephanie, do you have any pets?
Yes, I have 4 dogs. They're all at the South Carolina home, or I was thinking I'll put them on TV right, or put them on this right now. So I have 4 dogs. One's a Weimaraner named Bear, and then Bella, and then she's a big old mean junkyard dog. And then Daisy is my rescue dog, and she's a sweet little white mutt. And then Peanut is my husband's dog, and she's a Boykin Spaniel. So, and we just lost our cat. We just lost our cat. We had bought this hunting property, and her name was Essie, like SC for South Carolina. And
Mm.
so she came with the hunting property. When we bought the place, she came with the place. So we'd known her for 2 years, and she was just the protector of the property. We barely had to feed her because she would hunt. And we lost her about, I guess, a few weeks ago. She was very old, but she was very sweet. So Essie was my
Oh, I'm so
cat.
sorry to hear that about Essie. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So we need to get another cat.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But oh my gosh, 4 dogs.
4 dogs.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I grew up with dogs, but I'm just like cat lady now. But oh my God, that's a lot of work. 4 dogs
Well,
is a
it is,
lot.
but they're outside dogs and they're older dogs and they take care of themselves. They're inside dogs, but I like to put them outside. But I had never had a cat before, and Essie was just the sweetest. I mean,
Oh,
some cats I guess are kind of aloof, but when we would pull up at the property, she'd come waltzing out and she'd get up on the top of the truck because she liked the hood was warm. And then
mm.
she'd sit there for a little bit and then she'd come over if we were sitting around the campfire. She'd snuggle up with us. And yeah, we need to get another Essie.
I support. You need to message me when you do because yes, there's. It's funny because having that like, and I'm very proud, crazy cat lady. But like I'll have some listeners that will sometimes message me and they're just like, oh hey, I just found your channel and I heard you're into cats. I wanted to send you a picture of my cat or my dog. And I'm like,
Oh,
yes,
cool.
I love that. Or they're like, I just adopted a new pet. Send me. I love it. Like I love that.
I will
So,
send you pictures. I will.
yes, that would make my heart so happy.
Yes, yes.
So I know we talked about a little bit of where people can find you, but can you list where you are on social media, all the
Yeah.
platforms where people can find your podcast?
Yeah. So my podcast is Everything They Missed, and you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, anywhere. The website is everythingtheymissed.com, and that has a killer trailer. One of my teammates is so good at cinematic trailers, and he put together a trailer for the show, which is so good. So go to Everything They Missed and watch that trailer. And then on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, they made me get on TikTok. You can find me at the Stephanie Tinsley. And so I don't love doing them, but I know that people like to see the people that are on the pod. So you can go to the Stephanie Tinsley on Instagram or TikTok and Facebook and see me and then see characters in the show. So yeah, please do and follow me and make sure to follow the show. So thank
Awesome.
you for having me.
Yes, and I did link
fun.
your information in the drop down bar. So
Wonderful.
it is readily available for people to find as well.
Thank you.
So thank you again, Stephanie, so much for coming on Danny After Dark. And thank you for, I say thank you for taking the time to, to talk to me and be able to get to know you at CrimeCon. And I'm so grateful I had that opportunity because you're absolutely amazing and the work you're doing is so important. So I'm just so honored to be able to give my time and just my platform for you to get that information out there so everybody hears this.
Thank you. And I appreciate that so much. I appreciate it so much. It's been so fun getting to know you. And so I hope we get to do this again.
Oh, anytime. Like when the new season, but in December.
Yeah, in December when it drops and everybody's jaw is on the ground, call me back and we'll talk about it. Yeah, and if you ever want Mark to come back and talk Murdaugh, good Lord, he'll talk about everything. Mark is a talker, so
I'm
come
sure
talk about Murdaugh if you want him to. Yeah.
I'm sure I will probably by the time I wake up tomorrow have a message from somebody being like, get him on.
Right.
Get him on.
More Murdaugh. More Murdaugh. Well, on next week is the Hulu. Hulu's doing a scripted series on Murdaugh, and there is somebody playing Mark in it, which is surreal. That a really good-looking guy is playing my husband on TV. So that comes out on the 15th. What's today? So it's like next Wednesday, I guess. Hulu's scripted series called Murdaugh, A Death in the Family, I think is what it's called. But Patricia Arquette is playing Maggie. They've got some pretty good characters on that. But yeah, look for my husband and look for us because we were extras on the set one day. So there's a little Easter egg of me and Mark and my son. So watch it on Hulu.
Wait.
I'm serious.
No, I know. I'm just, wait, so your husband's an extra, but then there's somebody playing him.
Yes. And so the scene is the Watermelon Festival. I'm not sure what episode that's going to be on, but Tommy Dewey is the actor that plays Mark. He's really good looking, just like Mark. And so there's a scene where Alex and Mark's character come together at the Watermelon Festival. And as they're approaching each other, me and Mark are standing back here as like extras, like, citizens at the Watermelon Festival. And you can see us right behind them when they come together. It was so cool to be there. It was so cool. They shot it in Atlanta. It was really fun. Yeah.
I cannot wait to see that.
Fun.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Everybody
so the trailer got like 11 million views. Watch the trailer when this is done. The trailer for it is outstanding.
I will absolutely be doing that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry we went on and on and on, or I went on and on.
Oh my gosh, no.
But thank you.
This is amazing. So thank you, Stephanie, for joining. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And if you missed this live and if you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment and we will get back to you. So everybody enjoy the rest of your evening. And remember, until next time, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.